I'm sure there are many of my peers out there whose prime years were the 90s and early 2000s, in which they had many fun days outside on their bicycles. I happen to be one of them, and the movie I'm covering in this video inspired me to be a bit more athletic in those days. Back in those times, when technology was less advanced than it is now, many came up with creative ways to entertain themselves, not just on foot, but with sports hardware. You could say we had some RAD experiences. So what can we learn about this film of bike riding? Welcome to Life Lessons in Movies. The 1986 American film RAD, to which the international title was referred to as Hell Track, is a live-action sports film directed by Hal Needham. The story revolves around the arts of bicycle motocross, or BMX for short, which according to sources is still a popular sport today. The story rides along with the protagonist, 17-year-old Crew Jones, who has a fascination with riding his bicycle and is able to perform numerous advanced stunts. His experience developed through his career in delivering newspapers. When a BMX Super Bowl event comes to the small town he lives in, Crew takes the opportunity to qualify for a chance to race with the other BMX professionals. And like all journeys, this one is not without its challenges. So let's take a look. Number 1. Safety first. When performing any thrilling activity, it's always important to consider the means to remain safe. One wrong move in something like this can result in various levels of injury. Even in the case of years of experience, the moment we allow ourselves to become complacent with our experience is when we or someone else can get hurt, not to mention the potential of property damage. In addition, wearing the proper protective equipment can mean a significant difference between a fun life with all of your body parts and a crippled one. Just because you may have cheated some injuries does not mean you always will. Number 2. Take your passions seriously and maintain the proper balance of applying them for your enjoyment. While some things may be fun or funny, if they escalate to the point it's causing people unnecessary issues, you could end up building a list of enemies whom, under a better relationship, may just be able to help you at one time or another. Remember, karma has a lot more experience than we do at leveling the playing field. Number 3. Build genuine positive relationships. Whether as business partners, associates, friends, or intimate partners, make sure your interaction in any relationship is morally legitimate. In the scene of a gathering at what appears to be some type of town hall or city hall event, the city of Cochrane welcomed a major bike company owner for the BMX Super Bowl event known as Hell Track. However, during the meeting, one citizen mentions a negative side of the event involving local children. That perception being that the local kids were not allowed to race in their own backyard per se, but yet the professional riders are able to since it's an official event. Mr. Duke Best, the owner of the bike company, arranged an opportunity for one local to participate in Hell Track via a qualifying race, as well as a $10,000 reward. For a situation like this, it could be classified as a form of public relations, or PR for short. If you want stable, progressive business, healthy relationships with customers and partners are critical. Another example in the case of Crew with his newspaper delivery job, while the locals don't hate him because of his somewhat lacking efforts, they are peeved by it. However, later in the movie, Crew corrects this behavior and is likely to have earned a more positive image in the eyes of the locals toward him. Sometimes the simple things you do can have significant effects on others. Number 4. Have self-control and respect for boundaries. When someone is not interested in a particular task, there is no justification in haggling them about it. In addition, expressing certain comments, especially sensitive or insulting ones, is not only rude and immature, it can also be dangerous. Just as we would want our boundaries respected, we need to practice what we preach. Wesley Jones, who is the younger sister of Crew Jones, admires the BMX skills of her brother and cheers him on. While she was waiting for him to pick her up from school, she was approached by two of her schoolmates, one with an invitation to join the arts and crafts to welcome the BMX riders, but also to welcome, in particular, Bart Taylor, who was labeled the top BMX rider in America. Wesley was not impressed by Taylor's visit to the town, nor his achievements. And when approached by another schoolmate with a snarky-mannered question of waiting for her brother, Wesley responded with a sarcastic comment of meditating. The male student challenged Wesley's perception of her brother's skill set, claiming it's nothing next to Bart Taylor. This struck a very sensitive nerve in Wesley, to which she responded with a threat for the male student to either retract his statement or suffer physical harm. Upon one of the faculty members intervening, the male student proceeded with taunting gestures outside of the faculty member's sight, to which Wesley retaliated with multiple kicks toward the male student. Crew arrived shortly after and assisted in stopping the altercation. In analyzing this incident, it appears that some of the students are aware of Wesley's weakness and exploited it, the male student being the main culprit. There was no benefit in his comment to be expressed at Wesley directly. While we may have a right to our opinion, sometimes there is no point in expressing it to parties whom it directly addresses, especially when there is a high probability it'll spark an altercation, and when there is no desire to gain mutual understanding. Remember, just because we can do something does not always mean we should, especially when expressed out of spite. Overall, the male student made himself an enemy to Wesley due to his pride for someone who doesn't even know him, nor does he really know Bart Taylor. Moving on to Wesley, it is absolutely irritating when a loved one is conversed about in negative terms. However, we can rest assured that opinion is not truth. For those of us whom it applies, allowing our weaknesses to be known to parties who are up to no good can be extremely risky, especially when we are undisciplined in self-control. Upon exploiting it, we can sometimes end up putting ourselves in a severely losing situation. The retaliation by Wesley resorting to assault did not change the male student's perception of Crew, although he is more likely to keep those comments out of earshot from Wesley moving forward. If we physically attack someone without the proper cause to justify the means, we only make things more difficult for ourselves and for others around us. One way to effectively combat someone expressing unmerited negative opinions is by refusal to entertain such foolishness to begin with. People of this mindset crave reactions, and it usually drives them crazy when they don't obtain it. They'll either try harder and eventually give up, or give up early on, depending on their determination. However, the harder they try usually involves them engaging in carelessness and resorting to poor decisions. The bottom line, we need to pick our battles wisely and determine which ones actually get us the W. During the parade featuring the BMX teams, Bart Taylor stopped the vehicle he was driving and approached Christian Hollings. It is unclear what he said to her, but Christian made it clear she was not pleased by what Bart said or did to her as she rolled up the window of the driver's side door. Upon returning to his vehicle, the Reynolds twins requested reasoning for the stop, hinting of giving Christian a little attitude adjustment. Whatever the issue was between them, the lesson to learn is that dealing with such matters on the showroom floor is the worst place to do it. Bart expressed a desire to talk with Mr. Best about the business relationship between them and Christian, which would have made more sense to do rather than trying to handle the interaction the way he engaged. In the chance that these two were possibly a couple at some point, circumstantial evidence shows that Christian is completely done with it and is just upholding the terms of her contract with Team Mongoose. To which the lesson here is to honor the decision of those who are done with any relationship and refrain from any actions that could be construed as harassment. Another portion of that, as Christian later in the movie became romantically interested in Crew, you must first be completely done with the previous intimate relationship and healed from any damages before moving to the next one. At the high school dance in town, Bart Taylor and the Team Mongoose crew also attended, most likely for PR credit. Crew was also there, but he did not have a date, and he was outside and most likely bored. Having his bike with him, he started performing bike stunts and eventually attracted a crowd of students. And one of the spectators watching was Christian Hollings. Seeing Crew's skills in action, Christian equips her bike and invites Crew to join her for a time of bicycle boogieing at the dance. Apparently, this was off script with Taylor and the others. Crew, a bit hesitant at first, made his entrance onto the floor, and the show began. Taylor, clearly unamused, eventually leaves with his team during the performance. I have a couple of theories of why Christian did what she did. Seeing Crew's talent and how natural he performs them on his bike, she may have wanted to experience that passion with him, and also use her status to help highlight his talent. She may have also been trying to show Bart that there are non-mainstream riders out there who are just as good or better than him, to which also attracted the attention of Duke Best as he was watching. While in the movie there did not appear to be any reprimand for Christian's actions, this might not be the case for us in certain circumstances in life. When you work for a company, it is important to fulfill the terms of your contract with them. Know what you can and cannot do, and more so what you should and should not do. Any breach in the terms of a contract on either side may render the contract void, and sometimes this can lead to dismissal from the company or even legal consequences, depending on the offense. Therefore, if a contract must be canceled, make sure you are 100% in the right, both legally and morally. The additional takeaway from this is that, number 5, eyes are on you, even though it may seem otherwise. Therefore, it's important that we always carry ourselves in our actions appropriately. And when the right people come along, they may present an opportunity that can help us. With the ending of the bicycle performance, the crowd cheered both riders. Some of that may be related to the fact that Crew had collaborated with Christian, who has a higher public status than his own. This shows the importance of building genuine, healthy relationships with others. Another takeaway is that, number 6, opportunities can surface at any time, and sometimes in uncommon ways. Therefore, being prepared in all aspects is advised, especially emotionally. Number 7, consider all of your options when making life-changing decisions. In the sequence in which Crew and Christian shared an activity known as rear-end sliding, they both mentioned their plans to go to college. Crew further shared his dismay of taking his SATs on the same day as the qualifying race for HellTrack. Christian mentioned to Crew a sibling of hers took time away from the concept of college and then returned to it later on, and they turned out just fine. Therefore, take the time to look at all options available and develop a solid plan and preparations to execute them. You may become emotional in the process, which may alter proper judgment, so watch out for that. Moving forward, Crew pursued to forge his mother's name on a consent form to participate in the qualifying race. We'll come back to this later, but for now, let's move to our next lesson. Number 8, maintain focus on your goals. While at work at a restaurant, one of Crew's friends became aware of his attempt to qualify for HellTrack. In addition, another individual who appears to be around Crew's age caught wind of it as well and mocked the idea verbally. Crew prepared to attack the individual and was stopped by his friend, being told it was not worth getting fired over. While it may be emotionally hurtful, we must develop the emotional resilience for scenarios such as these. The individual who mocked Crew, by circumstantial evidence, has no influence in the decisions regarding his future, nor the outcome in qualifying for HellTrack. You do not need to prove anything to anyone who has no influence in the outcomes of scenarios involving you. One very proficient way to prove something is through success. That does not always mean you have to be at the top, but even so, do it for you, not for their acceptance. Number 9, take the time to truly understand your loved one's passions and all opportunities of their future. Crew's mother became aware of his successful attempt to qualify for HellTrack and confronted him about it. She expressed her disappointment in him for giving up his chance at what she referred to as a solid future for a bicycle race, and calling it very self-destructive. Crew counter-argued that his current best talent was riding his bike. and with the success in qualifying, it enabled him a chance to rise to a higher status. He further shared he would be able to make up the SATs in 6 months. But the current opportunity had even more of a limited time frame, and to throw that away would be self-destructive. Crew's mother allowed him to race under the promise that he would take the SATs in 6 months regardless of any other circumstances, to which Crew agreed. First and foremost, I do not encourage the use of any form of forgery or any other related methods of defiance toward a parent, guardian, authority figure, or any other person just to accomplish a goal. Always seek the proper channels. There will be times we might lack understanding of our loved ones' talents and how they may present an opportunity for success. And the entertainment industry can be quite a challenge. But in all honesty, just about every job can be, especially when unprepared. Crew's mother may not have been aware at the time the ability to take the SATs at a later date. At the same time, one of the points she wanted to make to Crew was refraining from continually pushing back the chance to take the SATs if he really wants to go to college. When it comes down to it, instead of making assumptions about the obsolescence of a loved one's talents, which is oftentimes based on our own ignorance, let's seek to understand the whole picture. And in that, we may also be able to guide our loved ones through it and make the most sense of it in all aspects. That cannot be accomplished by dismissing it. Number 10, carefully consider business offers. Duke Best had interest in the business whereabouts of Crew, and upon hearing Crew's successful qualification to HellTrack, he became concerned. Mr. Best arranged to meet with Crew and offered him a business deal involving publicity and financial backing. The only catch was Crew would have to forfeit racing in HellTrack. Crew, who has a specific goal for his own life and future, rejected Best's offer and went back to work, which upset Mr. Best. There will be times when we are approached with offers. However, we must make sure that we read the fine print and all of the terms before signing the dotted line. One of the leading causes why some get screwed over is from ignorance of keen investigation of a contract, which is sometimes driven by desperation. When you are not able to comprehend the terms of a contract, you need to find someone who can. In the case with Crew, he was not going to settle for a lower status when he knew he was capable of achieving higher, if not the highest. One important note on that, sometimes we may need to start at a lower level to reach further to the top. Put all options on the table and weigh the benefits against the liabilities. Number 11, keep your ego in check. Bart Taylor, upon receiving word about Crew's participation in HellTrack, is not concerned about it and boasts of his success. Mr. Best, clearly agitated by Bart's loose concern on the matter, challenged Bart's logic. Bart has seen Crew in action at the dance performing stunts, and possibly in the qualifying race. While it is important to have confidence, there is a line to avoid crossing. Overconfidence can bring with it significant risks, mainly leading to carelessness and simple mistakes. Just because you may have been labeled the best in something does not mean you will stay at that status, especially when you don't work diligently to maintain it. Never underestimate your opponent. Number 12, cheating to win only shows how much skill you don't have. Mr. Best has shown that the main reason he is concerned about the race with Crew is the business deal he set up with a major investor. The deal was that products with Bart Taylor's face would be distributed as long as Bart wins the race at HellTrack, and Mr. Best was determined to stop Crew from possibly ruining that deal. Mr. Best changed the rules for eligibility to participate in the race by 1, requiring the rider to have a sponsor, and 2, requiring the sponsor to have accumulated at least $50,000 in sales. While Crew and their friends did get their own sponsor, there was no way, through their own means, they would accumulate the 50 grand in a 24-hour period. This severely angered Crew, to which he left the sales stand. Clearly, Mr. Best does not have as much faith in Bart Taylor as he boasted publicly. In addition, it is apparent that Mr. Best has made some poor financial decisions in the past, and this may appear to have been the possible turnaround he needed. At the same time, Mr. Best underestimated the talents of the town. Overall, Mr. Best's stress was reaching a boiling point, and he did not hesitate to push that stress toward those who worked for him. While Mr. Best had the right to change the rules of Helltrack regarding the requisites, the issue was in the motive for changing them. It was to secure personal gain, and considering the current position of Mr. Best and what he has, it really should be classified as a conflict of interest for someone to have their own racing team competing on a track they also control the rules thereof. Therefore, stay alert for cases such as these. Number 13. The journey to achievements will have challenges and may require significant assistance. Crew was distraught after the huge financial burden formulated by Mr. Best, thinking that it was foolish to refuse the offer Best presented him earlier. He argued with Christian that he learned that nothing can compete with money, and that you must take what you can get or you're screwed. Christian counter-argued her disappointment in Crew, being that just because everything wasn't going his way, he basically gave up. Crew, upon his next shift delivering newspapers, improved by ensuring the papers landed on the porch of residences, which appeared to have a positive impact on the customers. Ultimately, a meeting was held between the citizens and the mayor as word spread about the restrictions on Crew to race. Some were for helping Crew and his team, while some were not, especially the mayor. Sergeant Smith of the Cochrane Police Department, who had an older brother or uncle type of relationship with Crew and his friends, challenged the logic of refraining to help. Ultimately, the locals agreed to help close the financial gap in purchasing RAD Racing shirts, but were still $27,000 short from the goal. And Burton Timmer, who has been around a long time and also a contributor to Helltrack, has been watching all of the events of restrictions placed on Crew. From circumstantial evidence, it appeared that he was agitated by them. Mr. Timmer made a bold move and covered the remaining outstanding balance. Therefore, the lesson being again, when you build genuine positive relationships, it will likely be those people who will help you in your time of need. With Mr. Best catching wind of the news that Crew will be competing in Helltrack, this moves us to our next lesson. Number 14. Interacting with poor character diminishes your social status. As mentioned before about Mr. Timmer being aware of the stunts Mr. Best was pulling to stop Crew, he mentioned to Mr. Best earlier that he was beginning to see Mr. Best as something he may have stepped in, and he did not like the smell of it. Mr. Best responded with a line of claiming Mr. Timmer did not get where he was by being soft, and Mr. Timmer responded with a reminder that no one uses him. When you have poor character with no desire to correct it, you can only fake good character for so long until you finally slip or even just say to heck with the act and show your character for what it actually is. But just know you can still choose to grow out of that bad character. Mr. Best, who was still trying desperately to stop Crew, orders the Reynolds twins on Team Mongoose to block or stop Crew during the race, and then urges Taylor to win. After slamming a beverage-filled glass down on the table, Mr. Best demanded confirmation of his instructions being clear, and upon leaving, Bart expressed irritation with Mr. Best's attitude on the whole situation. Mr. Best then approached Mr. Timmer, and he addressed that Mr. Timmer made a big mistake by purchasing a surplus amount of RAD Racing shirts. Mr. Timmer was not fazed by Mr. Best's attitude and encouraged Mr. Best to buy as many as he could. Mr. Best tried to push it further, which only led Mr. Timmer to express his final words to Mr. Best in the form of a common hand signal. For the record, I do not recommend using this form of language in any setting, especially not in professional environments. Eventually, people will catch on when you try to manipulate them. And that is what Mr. Best was trying to do to Mr. Timmer, with his claim that they both would lose significantly if Taylor loses, which leads to a little extra lesson. Mr. Timmer did something wise, which was he avoided putting all of his eggs in one basket. Mr. Best, on the other hand, did not. And with the ending results of Hell Track, Crew came in first place, to which Mr. Best barraged Bart with negativity, claiming Bart would never work again. Bart quickly threw Mr. Best's unwelcome gestures aside and approached Crew, leading to the final lesson: there is honor in humility. Bart Taylor congratulated Crew on his recent victory, to which Crew was thankful for the kudos. Ultimately, in an indirect manner, Taylor requested to be part of the RAD team, and through the recommendation by Wesley and by unanimous decision, Bart was accepted into the group. When someone shows significant skill, it is good moral practice to show proper courtesy of acknowledgement. While it was not well received by the Reynolds twins nor Mr. Best when Taylor took out his remaining teammate during the race and stopped for Crew to catch up, it did allow for everyone to see who possessed the greater skill in those moments, and without any further obstacles or distractions. Taylor was most likely tired of being underestimated himself and also tired of Mr. Best. Therefore, if Taylor did win, chances would have been Mr. Best would have given some flack for Taylor's actions, but would not have had much to argue with the W. And in the case of Crew winning, which did happen, being that Taylor was fed up with Mr. Best, he was then free to find work elsewhere, which is exactly what he pursued with Crew and the others. This further emphasizes the lessons of building genuine, positive relationships with people, and also considering your business offers and decisions carefully. Are there some lessons you learned in this movie and would like to share? You are invited to share those lessons in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like. And if you'd like to see more and you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and click on the bell icon to activate notifications for the next productions to be released. Life has lessons to teach us, and although we might not be perfect, we are capable of improving ourselves. So until next time, keep learning and stay wise.